Thunder Grunt.
Hey guys,
Bob.
Hey, Bob.
welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of a movie like a script. We're going to go around the table and introduce ourselves. We're going to start with Jimmy George.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
I am Jamie Nash. I am a robot. That's what it sounds like. No. My Twitter handle is @Jamie_Nash. I'm a screenwriter.
That's right.
And I'm at Thunder Grunt Bob on Twitter, and I'm awake, and that's what's
It's
important.
amazing.
Yeah, but we're going to start out by learning who wrote 1917, the movie we're talking about today.
Yeah, who wrote
Jamie.
It was a collaboration.
Why are we all talking so weird?
I don't know. between Sam Mendes, popular writer of things like
Skyfall?
American Beauty. No, he
I don't
didn't
know if
write
he wrote
American
it.
Beauty. He
he
directed
directed.
it.
He's a
Yeah,
director.
yeah.
He's more known for his directing.
Revolutionary Road?
Revolutionary Road.
That's he directed that. Yeah.
Yes, I dig that movie.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really a visual guy.
Mhm.
Amazing visuals. And
American
his-
Beauty was what brought him on the scene.
Right.
Absolutely.
Theater
Yeah,
background.
American Beauty is
Yeah.
what you think of. And Krysty Wilson-Cairns is her name. She's a Scottish writer. She has done things like Penny Dreadful. I think she was on the Penny Dreadful for a few seasons. She originally got her start with the Blacklist script called Aether. Was the script. It was a sci-fi script. It kind of was like a sci-fi take on Blowout. It was
Okay.
basically like
awesome.
there's sounds have a half-life, and they have this device that can listen.
You mean the John Travolta movie?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Was there
So-
another one? The French
There's-
New Wave something.
Yeah,
or- I
you
don't
meant
know.
the John Travolta movie.
That's the one I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it basically had this. I don't know why I'm pitching her movie, but the Blacklist script. It was this. I read it years ago.
It's
She-
riveting.
She had this.
That sounded sarcastic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. There was this sci-fi device that could, sound kind of as a half-life. So they could put it in a room where there was a murder victim and hear the murder and try to solve the murder based on that.
Whoa.
And she had that, hit the Blacklist. She met lots of cool people, among them Sam Mendes. She was originally
I
on.
think it's Mendes, but
Is it really? I've always
I have no
thought.
idea.
I don't know why. I've always called him
Jamie,
Mendes.
we always make
Yeah.
Jamie say the name.
I might be wrong. Maybe it is Mendes.
Well, I think he should spell it with a Z then. That's mine. That's my take.
yeah.
So-
Names.
So, she wrote I think she had something at Spielberg, that Voyeur Hotel. Do you remember that one?
Oh,
at
yeah.
all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was that crazy one. That has a really cool history as well that you can listen to about on another podcast.
She's currently writing the sequel 1918.
Is she really? I didn't know that.
No!
I have no idea.
Come on! I was.
I thought 1941. I didn't
No,
know.
but she's writing the Edgar
Yeah.
with Edgar Wright.
Oh,
is her
really?
next
Yes,
flick. Yes.
yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So she
Okay.
basically is with every cool Brit director in the,
Yeah.
she's basically just moving from one to the other and writing a new script.
We're recording this before the Oscars, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, we don't know what's
So-
gonna happen.
Yeah, so we don't know. If
I know
she's
what's
won.
going to happen, but I'm not going to tell.
Jamie's got the details.
Yeah, Jamie's in the
I
inside.
don't like to use my power for that. Apparently the genesis of this script, and well, first want to do box office.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Give me the
Yes.
drum roll. Morning Zoo drum roll.
the fart sounds and the dolphin squeal.
Exactly.
Right.
Right now, this one stands at $122 million.
Okay.
Is that global?
That is domestic.
Domestic.
International, $130 million for a grand total of $253 million.
Really? So it's not worldwide just destroying.
I mean,
like I thought
for
it
a
was.
drama though, I think
Yeah,
that's
For an
pretty
original
good.
drama,
Yeah.
no IP really behind
That's
it.
true.
And think about this
Hey,
too.
it's $250 million.
It's-
I'm not trying to undersell that. I'm just
No,
Yeah.
but for a non-American war movie to do that good in America, that's
yeah. No, you're
pretty
right.
good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I would think.
It's a bust. No.
It's crap. Let's not even talk about it.
So apparently, Sam gave her a call one day and said, "Hey, Krysty, I got an idea." And then she, "Oh, really?" No, I don't know. I can't do her Scottish
Yeah,
accent.
don't try the Scottish
love
accent. Jamie.
So it would come out like
Cultural appropriation of Scottish people.
It would come out a little like Shrek if I did. Get in my belly. No, it's like
That's
so-
not even
I
Shrek.
know.
That's Fat Bastard.
That's right. Well, same thing.
That's the same.
right? Same
thing.
guy.
It's just funny that
Same
you
guy.
quoted Fat
Yeah.
Bastard.
Yeah, but I
We should
call,
probably talk about 1917 at some
Yeah.
point.
he is Shrek to me. So she got
The
a call.
fact that we brought Shrek.
Yeah, Shrek will come into
Yeah.
every podcast now. So she got the call from him. He wanted to do a World War I movie.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of had the idea of The Messenger. I think that was in his history, his family history,
Yeah.
if I'm remembering this.
Yes.
And basically he ended the call with, "And it's going to be done in one shot." And hung up.
Yeah.
It's-
He's like,
Wait,
what?
Wait, what?
Oh, what? Huh? So that's
Yeah.
our
Yeah,
backstory.
that's the
on it.
backstory. Yeah. That's
The
everything.
The one shot thing's popular, you know.
Yeah, and
We
apparently
can do it better now.
Apparently, when they first sat down at the kitchen table and met, they came up. She said they came up with the whole structure for it, and it didn't change after that. She
Right.
said that was the first time
So-
she had ever done that. They kind of hammered out the initial structure,
Yeah.
and then after that, it was a lot of research and things like that sprinkled into the
Gotcha.
structure and story.
Gotcha.
I mean, writing for one shot. I mean, there's no time jump, really.
Right.
There's only one time jump in the movie.
And so it's weird that the gimmick is not really in the law. That's not really touted. Like, unless you're on.
You mean the
into-
advertised?
Yeah. Like, unless
Yeah.
you're into film and you really dig this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like the marketing doesn't tell you that it's
Yeah, it's
a
not
gimmick.
like One Cut of the Dead. They should
Yeah.
have one cut of.
In fact, if I remember the trailer correctly, when it shows Colin Firth talking to giving the soldiers their assignment, it actually kind of like shows it and then cuts into him.
Oh.
And I was like,
The
that's
way
interesting that they
edited
cut
the trailer as if
I
it
could
was
be
like-
remembering it wrong, but I remember there being a cut that it gets close up on Colin Firth's face.
Oh, there's a close up.
yeah, and I was like, it's funny when you watch the movie that it's
almost
just a
like
smooth
jump cut
shot.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
They,
that's-
they tricked you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
not
so
really. I don't
interesting.
think they sold that. in
Yeah,
the
I
marketing,
wonder how many
so.
people came to the movie and were like, "Wait, this
Yeah.
feels like one shot," and we're
I-
completely
it-
taken aback.
Yeah, I didn't know it when I first saw the trailer. It took
Yeah.
me like, after hearing about it, I'm like, oh, that's
I didn't
interesting.
either.
Yeah,
That's
I
what I'm
didn't.
saying. It's so interesting.
Yeah,
And how would you? I mean, I could see
Yeah.
like titles. Experience the life of a soldier in one cut.
I
saw
also
that.
think.
unedited.
Right, in a way that's not cheesy.
I
Yeah,
also
Be
think
tricky.
that even though this is a very serious movie, it's not like an Avengers movie, but audiences aren't going to come to a movie if you tout the special effects. And this, while it is a gimmick, it's still part of special effects.
right.
You know what I mean? They're not impressed by the fact that you can do it in one shot now.
Right.
Like the
Right.
normal layman audience.
Yeah.
It's like, of course they can. They can do anything. So
Yeah.
why would that be very impressive?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
style thing.
We've
That's it.
seen, I mean, even One Cut of
Birdman
the
and-
Dead, Birdman,
Yeah.
that toys with this kind of stuff.
Back when I like
The
I
Haunting
think
of Hill House episode.
early aughts.
5 or
There was that
6.
Yeah, I
foreign
think
film.
it's 6.
Early aughts. There's a foreign film that came out when I was working at a video store called Russian Ark. And that was one
Russian
shot.
Ark. Yeah.
But
I forgot about
that was different because back then it wasn't a gimmick as much as they did the movie in one shot.
Right. It was a
Mm.
play.
It was literally
almost,
a play that
yeah.
was filmed in one like a location that they rehearsed and rehearsed. It wasn't like this where there's
Oh my God.
where it's
this.
stitched. Yeah, I know, but it's stitched together.
Right.
Whereas
yeah.
that was like literally they shot the whole thing in
It's
one
actually
shot.
always been my dream is to do a one-shot film
God.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
It's so
I could shoot
impressive.
it in a weekend.
I've seen
Unlike
40
this 65-day shoot. This was.
I've done 40-hour film festival where I've seen a team did that,
Right.
and and I asked them about it, and they said the great thing was we spent all of our time rehearsing,
Yep.
but once you get it, that there's no post.
Yeah.
It was like you add some music and you just
Yeah.
color it, and that's it. It was like, but they did a one shot 48-hour and it was like 8 minutes long,
Oh my gosh.
and it was going all throughout.
No
a house.
budget. One shot.
one shot.
That's
So,
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's impressive.
it was cool.
I'd like to do one day. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So
it'd be fun.
I wanted to bring this up before we get into it. Have
Yeah.
you written gimmick movies?
found footage, I think, is a similar style of gimmick.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's a genre now almost, though, right?
Yeah, but
It's a gimmick.
You could see where this could
You
be.
both have written.
That's what I was going to talk about with you. Yeah,
Because for me, conceptually, the thing that always fascinated me about found footage was because it's a gimmick, you could just apply it to movies that have already been made. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, there hasn't been an exorcism movie. Let's do found footage exorcism. There hasn't been a Godzilla found footage. And I think this gimmick could be applied the same way.
Cloverfield's
I agree.
Godzilla. Cloverfield's Godzilla found footage. Pretty
Exactly.
Much. Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think this movie could be the same thing. Hey, there hasn't been a zombie movie done in one shot. Let's do a zombie movie. There hasn't been a superhero movie done in one shot. Let's do a
shot.
And it kind of is the new
gimmick
you're bringing to the mix.
And
I'm not
we
sure
probably
that'll happen,
will see that, though.
There'll be at least one.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is that big of a, because of the budget of it and the difficulty to make this movie.
Oh my gosh. I
it
can't
may
even
not.
imagine.
If this movie had made $2 million or $2 billion, I mean, then maybe
everybody
we'd see
would have been
a
tazillion, to chase that gimmick to jump on it. Yeah.
The next
I don't feel like
Shazam
this
would
is
be
gonna-
one shot.
Shazam would follow 97.
Shazam, one shot.
Well, I guess here's the question: is do you guys think that this movie would work traditionally?
Not in the way it's told. So I read a bunch of
Traditionally shot. Let me clarify that. Yeah,
I think it could.
I think it could.
I think it could. I mean, there's even an argument to be made. It could be better. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it wouldn't be better.
When it comes to this, I know we're talking about cinematography, but when it comes to this, there is kind of a distance sometimes because everything has to be in one shot.
So yeah,
you know what I mean.
So
for me,
I'm assuming that there would be amazing cinematography. There would be a lot of long takes, but just a little bit different, like just a slight re-edit of this, and I could see it still
would
work.
Fury Road be better with one shot? That's a question
Holy
too.
shit,
I think
that
so.
You know what I
would
mean?
be with
Well,
one
no, a
shot.
movie where the protagonist just has to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, if we took that and changed it to that,
I think
style.
so.
You really think so? I don't know.
I think it would be cool. I'd like to see it.
I'd see it, sure. Yeah.
So there's like a million interviews out there with.
Would Almost Sunset be better in one? No. I'm just-
Deuce Bigelow, one shot.
All of them. You can like sit here. So he went through. So I patched together. This is not from one source. This is from like 10 sources. So it's hard for me to like quote where.
So it's
these
more
came
correct
from.
than it would be, right?
Where they basically talked about why they chose the gimmick, and then basically how it informed all the storytelling decisions because of the gimmick. And so I pieced together.
It's almost like the animation thing we've talked about.
Yes.
Like how it's being made is informing the script.
Informing the script.
Okay,
right.
yeah.
So the first thing that he talked about was why did they choose the gimmick? And he said that it wasn't about like flexing his muscles as a director and like flexing their... It does sound like bullshit. It's like, come on, there's got to be an element of ego there somewhere. But he said it was because he wanted the audience to experience the world through the eyes of these two soldiers and to like immerse the audience into like a wartime setting like this. And he's basically said, you know, people in war at any moment could be killed, and so he wanted to capture that feel. And he dismissed the first person shooter comparison, even though I do feels like a first person shooter game a lot, because he was basically saying you're not telling somebody a story, you are active in participant in the story, and those are two separate things. But so he had a reason for the gimmick, and I think that's very like telling, because like what the reason that I was asking you about the gimmick thing is, like, I read scripts all the time that are gimmicks and they suck because they didn't need the gimmick. And I feel like this movie does need the gimmick. I think that
what was constructed with it in place.
it was born out of the gimmick. Yeah. Like when we were doing
I almost don't like calling it a gimmick, but
it is a gimmick.
But
it is, but it feels like almost.
Here's my argument why I think it could survive, because I think it still as a gimmick, it'll be a real-time movie, which is also a gimmick.
Like Nick of Time.
Yeah,
Remember
exactly.
that movie?
Yeah,
Nick
Johnny
of Time.
Depp.
Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Or 24 or whatever.
Yeah, 24, right?
Like
Yeah.
that. And that's a gimmick too.
Yeah.
Like, can we do a movie in real time?
Yeah.
And those were shot traditionally.
And those were shot traditionally. It's just they flick to real time. I mean, there are probably a lot of real time movies at this point. I can't think of too many, but
like we've talked before, like Pulp Fiction works because if they told it linearly, it wouldn't be as good of a story.
Right.
You know, Memento works best backwards. it doesn't work. You tell it forward, it's not as good of a movie. So I like that both of you are kind of like, I think this is fine if it wasn't one shot.
I'm not really arguing that it shouldn't be.
I think it's still.
I just think it could be a good movie.
I think that if the same creators made this movie and they shot it traditionally, it'd still be a solid movie.
Right.
Gotcha.
It's a simple movie.
That's
and that's great.
But
and
it
that's
has
the only way
its
to
downsides.
I think the simplicity is part of the gimmick for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like a couple other things they said.
Let me argue one more reason why gimmicks can be bad sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they call attention to themselves.
Exactly.
So sometimes you're like, wow, how did they get from that shot to this shot? And you're thinking all these weird
And
things.
that's this
What's that?
movie.
Well, I'm saying, what's a great example of a gimmick calling attention to itself? A popular one.
Well, I think in this movie, there were times when it was transitioning, and I'm like,
Distracting.
that looks like where they did the edit. And I'm
Yeah,
playing
yeah.
that game with them.
Distracting.
How did they shoot that? Where did they
I
do
sadly started looking for the
Works
scenes.
against
Yeah.
his favor. But do you think that's because we make movies?
I think here's
there's
the
probably a
thing
little
is,
bit of
I don't
that.
believe
Yeah.
movies are about the first watch. So I think like the next time I watch 1917, I will not be doing that.
I agree.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
movies are made for eternity.
Yeah.
They're not made for the first viewing. So
Yeah.
while I agree with your point right there, because
Mhm.
I was looking for the seams, I won't next time.
Yeah.
I'll just
You'll just be there.
I'll just let
in
it happen. And I've
Yeah.
watched Birdman and
For
stuff.
me-
I don't care
Look,
anymore.
I love Children of Men, and there's that one
Yeah,
crazy
yeah.
scene that I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm constantly like, how did they do
How
this?
did they
Well,
do that?
The
Right,
reason
the
I
artistry.
guess the worst tweet I saw about 1917, I hate bringing up Twitter, but it was somebody saying like, just because a movie is impressive doesn't mean it's good.
Mm.
And I read that after I'd seen it, and I was like, yeah, but I think it was good, and it happens to be impressively
Yeah,
made.
I think
Like I kind of disagree with that.
that's
You know,
that's what I think I'm trying to argue too. Is that's why I think it could be as good without the gimmick.
Without the
I'm not
gimmick.
saying it's worse because of the gimmick. That's what I want to be clear
Yeah.
about.
And,
Yeah.
and my side of
like
this,
we're really worried about people coming down on us for not liking
no.
1917.
I'm trying to make it instructive for the listeners
Yeah,
who are,
yeah,
who
yeah,
are
yeah.
wrestling with a gimmick. You got a
Yeah.
gimmick.
What do you
Why
do?
do you choose it? That's the
Yes.
that's the question. And
Ma-
I think
Sam Mendes had a
Sam
reason.
Mendes had a reason.
Yeah.
It was an informed decision. It wasn't just because this is going to be cool. It was I want the audience to experience it this way in real time, because it is real time until he gets knocked out, and then when he wakes up, it's real time again. So
And
he said
there's kind of an importance to the fact that it is a war movie, and it really did happen.
yeah.
And, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to experience realism without a break, that's
Right.
actually something that could be argued is a little bit important.
Yes.
We've never had that in
Even-
this genre.
I agree. That's
So,
what makes
yeah.
it special. That's what makes it stand out. That's what,
Yeah.
for me, that's what makes this movie worth existing.
Right. And to that point,
So you're saying the gimmick is actually important.
I think
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
gimmick is the reason the movie belongs in the conversation.
to
Yeah.
that point, I mean, the movie is, and we kind of talked about this before, there's a ticking clock in this movie.
Mhm.
So we can feel the ticking clock with them, because as the time
Right.
goes on in the movie and things like
in
that.
real time.
In real time.
That we're seeing. We're not just feeling it's that. We're
Yeah.
seeing the real
We
time.
can see it. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
usually the ticking clocks are days or hours, and there's
Right.
edits and there's
Can't
chops
be.
and we jump.
Yeah.
I was thinking that while watching it, that doesn't have to keep reminding us almost. Like
Mhm.
we
No.
know the urgency of him
Because
getting
it's
there.
so palpable.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it hasn't
because
broken.
of the style.
Yeah, yeah.
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 It's created by the gimmick.
Whereas if it was traditional, they might have to throw in more reminders.
Oh, they
that,
absolutely would.
like it's get. You know what time it is. You know what time it is.
Yeah,
You got to
and
get
they're
there. We gotta
doing
get there.
that,
Yeah.
but that's just sort of they're
Yeah.
covering their ass with
And
that.
it was
Yeah.
weird. Like in the beginning of this, I'm like, this is weird because they have to cover amount of ground, and we're gonna have to watch them walk from A to B. You know, I was like,
yeah.
So
is this Lord of the Rings in real time?
in my
You know,
filmmaker
walk, walk.
mind, the one thing I was like, you know, what's kind of weird is that if it was traditionally made, there'd be so many more like Peter Jackson wide shots to show
Mhm.
us. Like,
Mhm.
remember how he was trying to get to the trees? And I'm sure this is actually in the script. Like, I'd imagine there would be a wide or aerial shot of seeing where he is in relation to the trees. But in the actual movie, the trees are kind of hidden over
Yeah,
there,
no.
and he's running
They
towards them.
kept
And I'm
it
like,
really intimate.
well, I was like, is that where he's going? Because we don't know, because
Yeah.
you can't cut to a wide.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
He
it's,
said he wanted
you know.
he wanted it as much as possible to be experienced how
confusing.
You
and
can't
we're
look,
with him.
You can only look left, right, front, back.
Right.
You can't. There's no shot, reverse shot.
No, we're not above the character.
Yeah.
We can't be above the character and see where everything is.
Early on, I know, and this is less script stuff, but they spend a lot of
It's
time.
hard not to talk about cinematography with
And
1917.
They spent a lot of time behind the two, and it was kind of, it's like, let's walk behind the two people and don't see their faces.
The wrestler shot, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
So okay, so going back to the gimmick choices, the writing based on the gimmick. So the first after choosing the gimmick, the next thing he talked about was, this is very unusual, and you pitch our show as we treat the movie like the final draft of the script. And so he said, and she said this too, from the start, it was the opposite. The script was the destination. The script was what the final edit was intended to look like.
Oh, okay.
So usually, like, a script is brought to set, and they're like, we'll figure out what the movie is when we get there.
Yeah.
But with this movie, they stuck to it religiously, and she was on set every day for 65 days, and they had to rewrite, like, emotional beats in the moment to make sure that they maintained the gimmick. So, like, it was constantly being rewritten, but they also tried to stick to it religiously. It's like a very interesting case in that way.
So there's no play with it or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was like, we designed it for the gimmick. Everything that happens on set has to be tweaked so we can maintain the, like, integrity of the gimmick.
Yeah.
So that's another, like, really weird writing thing that we don't really encounter on this show, like
chicken and egg.
Yeah.
It's usually the other way around.
And they said that from the start. And then, okay, so we talked about, they said everything had to be real time. So every decision, every storytelling decision was based on, like, how long is this going to take?
Mm-hmm.
Like, before they even, like, crafted how they were going to shoot it, they were just having conversations about, like, how long is this going to take? Is it going to take 30 seconds for it to be 30 seconds on the page? Like, you know what I mean?
Right,
they were trying to
a minute a page.
Right. They
is
were
that
trying
happening?
to track.
Yeah.
They were trying to track that. They were
how many pages
that.
is the script?
So it's interesting. The script's 120 pages. The movie's 109.
Yeah.
So it is a little shorter
Yeah.
than the page.
So it doesn't translate like that.
Not exactly.
So you have to imagine that was really difficult, like, to plan out.
Yeah.
Like, how long is this gonna take? The next thing is, Jamie and I have both read the script. There's no camera instructions on the page, which is very interesting considering this is a movie based on, like,
it's the camera. The camera is God.
So on the opening page, it said this is going to be one shot.
Right.
But they made a separate document that was a 65-page document of camera instructions. It was the script without dialogue. So they had two scripts. They had they had a story script, and they had, like, a schematic script. So it was like they made the decision from the start. The story, we're going to focus on the story, and then the other departments are going to focus on their part of it. I think that's very interesting.
That's really
especially going back to,
what would that be called? Is there a name for that?
I mean, it's just
a shooting script,
production planning. What I find interesting about that is the very first screenplay I ever read was American Beauty, which Sam Mendes directed, and it's the shooting draft, and it's fucking riddled with camera directions. I mean, like, every page probably has, like, 20 camera instructions on it, on the American Beauty. Like, it taught me really bad lessons. So I find it fascinating that the first movie he directed was filled with camera instructions, and then now he's
maybe that was Alan Ball.
Yeah, maybe it was Alan Ball. Yeah, that's true. It's Kevin Spacey floating above the story.
Right.
Oh yeah, we can't enjoy that movie
anymore. the next thing he said was they had to figure out, and I think this is really instructive. They had to figure out, since they couldn't shoot 1,600 men in one frame, like a Star Wars movie or like a Saving Private Ryan or things that had the opportunity, they had to figure out, how do we visualize the stakes, and that's where the brother came in. Like, they put a face on it. They're like,
that was a late edition.
Which is
second
interesting.
Draft edition.
Because you would think that would be like day one.
It feels so natural, right?
Yeah.
I think
that's the heart of the movie.
I think they took a look at it and said it's a little cold.
Yeah, she called him up. This is her quote. She said, "Hey Sam, I'm really enjoying it so far, but I think we need a personal reason for them to be invested." So, brother,
it's because while he is saving 1,600 men,
You got to put a face on
you
the
have
stakes.
no face, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really instructive thing. You always got to try to put a personal face on the stakes of the story.
Yeah.
The next thing was they couldn't write anything that might involve a close-up. So, like, they're so used to constantly writing scenes where it's like a natural thing as a writer to be like, this is going to be a close-up, like tear falls down their eye, things like that. And she said they were constantly writing things and then having a discussion, be like, shit, the only way we can shoot that is a close-up. Like, it's not going to work. And having to, like, go back and rework the same moments so that they could be shot wider and, like, maintain the gimmick.
It's weird that they couldn't push in and pull out.
They did sometimes.
They did sometimes, but why is that?
It sounds like they were really trying to cover their ass in the writing before they even got there.
I guess he wanted also like almost a framing. It had to stay a certain distance so he could see everything.
Probably.
Like you're playing
I don't know.
Like you're playing GTA and you want to see the guy walking around. You don't want to see his up close face.
Right. Back to the gaming thing, which I think is
interesting. That's how I mentioned.
Yeah. He's like, it's not like a first person shooter, but I mean, it feels like it a lot of times.
This would be a third person shooter, right?
Because
you're looking at the character on the screen and you're playing him.
That's
it doesn't matter.
So the next thing, bouncing off
XCOM.
XCOM.
Right. Wow.
He said, they both said they couldn't craft any action that might be jerky. Like all the action had to be shot where they could follow it along, and they didn't want anything left and right. They were always trying to create action that could be shot forward, which was another hurdle for them. This was the big one, and I think, Jamie, this like is the diagnosis of why a lot of people aren't connecting with it. Their number one rule in the first draft: no exposition, because exposition slows the story down. So you have to stop to share exposition. So they wrote the entire first draft without ever having a moment of exposition for either Blake or Schofield, and then they went back in the second draft and started slowly revealing stuff. and that's what led to the decision to not reveal that he had a family until the end for the sake of maintaining the gimmick, which I think is really interesting. Like the exposition, you don't learn the things you learn about him until the end to maintain the gimmick. That's what they said.
Isn't that more character exposition than exposition of the story?
Character backstory. Yeah, that's still exposition.
Yeah.
It's weird though, because I think you could walk and talk it.
I think so too.
And they did.
And
even the metal stuff. They hinted at little thing like.
Do you think that's a cop out?
I threw my
Jamie?
medal away. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think it was just a choice not to put that kind of expositional nonsense into their movie.
Yeah.
Less it stops it.
I almost think this movie would work if you just knew that he had to get there to save everybody, and this guy had a brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't really need much.
You don't need
that. It would still work.
I found it hard to connect with him because I didn't know anything about him.
Yeah. I think to me
it's like Twilight of war movies. Like you just put yourself in his
that
place.
way. Yeah.
To me, it definitely it leaves you colder sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? It's again, it's just a choice. There are movies like this, and there are movies that are the other way. But this movie had a very short act one.
Yep.
And it didn't do the 10 things that needed, or 6 things that needed fixing, or whatever.
Right.
It didn't set up an arc, really. It didn't have like that deeper, like, whatever that is. I mean, whether it has a theme or not, we'll talk about, or these characters had arc. But it didn't set up like, I'm a sad guy and I need this to happen for this to happen, that you see in most movies that spend 10 minutes doing that.
We jumped right into the
the one thing it does with Schofield is the moment that I liked was that he blames him for picking him. That was like this arc that happens so fast because he dies soon. What's the other guy's name? Blake dies so quick after that, but there is a sense of like, you asshole, why did you make me do this?
Yeah.
And then it's like the rest of the movie is him trying to, honor him, the guy that he was mad at.
There's definitely
like that's the arc.
I wrote down a bunch of beats which we can get to later.
We will get to
the movie tries.
Yeah, there's definitely a thing where he's the reluctant soldier a little bit in the beginning, and by the end he's risking his life for
Absolutely.
people. So there's definitely an arc there. It's just not the same kind of
But
thing that's
what you're saying, the things that need fixing are barely there.
They're barely there.
They're barely there.
How long is the first act's like 15 minutes long.
It's short.
And it sort of has all the beats. It sets up 2 characters. It doesn't really set up emotional things that need fixing, really.
Yeah, no.
They get a mission. there is a little bit of debate. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it?
Yeah.
Did they back up? Didn't we? Blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And then they step out into the no man's land, and then we're on. And that's
Mhm.
in 16 minutes. But when you do it
Only
in
Wonder
16
Woman
minutes.
was there. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you do it in 16 minutes, it means you're missing something.
We've talked about that in the past.
Yeah,
The short act ones.
Short act one usually means you either are deciding not to do something like a big character arc or that kind of thing, or you have to plug it in later, which is always tricky to do. Like,
That's basically what they do, but really slowly.
Could I posit something that's not?
Yeah.
I know you guys are all talk terms, but in this instance, the reason I like some of this in the way it is because, like, you know, we were talking earlier about war stories and like our relatives and stuff. In a sense, there's a lot of this movie where I kind of got the sense that a man was learning who he was as the story went.
right.
Absolutely.
And like in the act of war, I think a lot, like, you know, when people talk about their army buddies, it's not like they had all the time in the world to like get to know the intimacies of them. They're fighting with these guys, and it's the act of being in the trenches that makes them close. It's not who they are as people sometimes. And that kind of, this movie has that feeling. Like, we're thrown into this and we have to be who we are, apparently. We don't really know.
No, and that's by choice.
So it functionally, historically might work in that way. You know what I mean?
Probably accurate. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like accurate historically, tonally.
I also think in this movie in particular, maybe the intention is not to give you anything, so you just latch yourself onto the people a little bit.
Like Twilight.
Is that how Twilight works?
To make
the main character is a surrogate that you can enter yourself into.
She had a quote. She actually said that. I quoted
she mentioned
her.
Twilight?
No, not Twilight. She said.
I don't like Twilight, by the way. I'm just using it as an example.
I've never seen
She said, "Where the fuck is it?"
I think I might have seen.
I've got my book report here, guys.
I know. Well, that was the criticism of Twilight: is the main character is a blank that you add yourself into.
I see.
She said that Schofield was designed to be an everyman coda, that he could have been any audience member's relative. That was by design.
Well, I feel smart now because I basically just said that. So yes,
and those are her words.
Yeah. So in that way, I think it really works.
Yeah.
Like if that's the intention, I think they pulled it off.
So this is the last talking point about what they said that informed all the writing choices based on maintaining the gimmick.
Okay.
They said they didn't want anybody to sit there and share their emotions and tell their stories amongst other soldiers because there's no time to do that. And they wanted to maintain the gimmick. And they said at all costs they wanted to avoid speeches in the movie. And so they had the challenge in every scene where they said, how can we turn feelings and psychology into filmable behavior? So he used that truck scene as an example. He was like, we really want all the guys in the truck to understand what just happened to him. We really want the audience to know that these guys are connecting with him, and we want to connect with Schofield and like let him emote about what just happened, the loss of his friend, and just like, you know, what he still has left to do. And so that's how they figured out the truck getting stuck. That was born out of how do we visualize his feelings in that moment. We're gonna get him stuck, and we're gonna have him push with all his might,
and he starts
freaking out. We're gonna give the audience a moment where he can express all of those feelings of what just happened, and we give the audience that same moment that if he was having a speech about losing his friend, it has the same effect. So they said at every scene they were trying to turn speeches and feelings into like filmable behavior, which I think is like a really
and if we know Jimmy George on this podcast, filmable goals is always something he says. So that's an interesting side like piece to that.
I think that's like a big takeaway from this moment. How can you turn speeches into just filmable behavior? And this movie
words into actions.
Yeah. So this movie excels at that. So that was the last thing they were.
Also, my favorite moment in this movie might be when the guy hands him the bottle of liquor,
and he's like,
because that was like the other soldiers, like you said, understand what he's going through. They're like, here, man. Take
his only words are, "There were two of us."
They don't need any more.
And they get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's really good writing.
Yeah, no. It was, not less words is always better.
Always better.
Always better.
Always better. So anyway, that was what my takeaways from reading all the interviews with them, that the gimmick informed a lot about the story itself that we saw, which I think is like very instructive. Like if you're gonna choose a gimmick, make it matter.
Production and style go into the script.
Yeah,
as we've seen in animation episodes, we've seen in like Fallout, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people would think we don't talk about that, but there's a reason to.
I was really drawn to the gimmick because my most famous project that I've been involved in was a gimmick,
right?
And we spent a lot of time. We had our sets of rules, like Frank Stewart, the main character, has a reason for the camera to be on. Like it was very deliberate. Everything that happened on the page, we had set rules as like the world of this story that we were going to follow, and everything that they discussed remind me of the process that we put into like making sure we stayed true to that gimmick. So
to the found footage gimmick.
To the found footage gimmick. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, you're good on that?
Good.
Okay.
Book report part 1.
And now Jimmy's going to talk about
No.
For his next book.
Well, I mean that we kind of covered
Reading Rainbow right here.
We covered the ticking clock, sort of.
Yeah.
I think we're probably on structure, maybe.
Yeah, the structure.
And the one thing I wanted to bring up with structure for this one is there's a thing in Blake that Blake talks about. Blake Snyder, Save the Cat. That we talk about Save the Cat a lot, but there's this other thing. I think maybe he brought it up in one of his later books or his blogs. I can't remember if it was the third book or not.
The best one.
The one that has Jamie in it.
That's right. I think we said that on the last
page 85.
We literally made this joke on the last episode.
I really have to find the page.
I can't believe you don't know the page.
I'll figure it out.
I really can't.
I think it's 85.
Sadly, it's hard. Whenever I open the book, it's hard to find because it's like lost somewhere in the middle. So I look for it like every night. So he has this thing called the 6 major beats. So there's this question when you first get started on a concept, what are the ones you start with? And he posits that these 6 are the ones to start with. So I thought maybe we talk about those tonight.
Yeah.
Or today. It's day. It's not night. We're in it whatever time you're listening.
Yeah.
It's that time.
Bob's house. Day.
So the 6 major beats are these: opening image, catalyst, break into 2, midpoint, break into 3, closing image. They're the ones that Blake says start with those. Come up with ideas for each of those. So in this movie, the opening image is it's the 2 guys laying by a tree. It's kind of peaceful.
Yeah, flowery meadow.
Yeah. And I'll just skip to the closing image because it usually bookends. He walks out in a similar kind of scene and sits by a tree, right? And he's alone this time, and it's after the war. I'm not even sure. Like, usually those bookend each other, and I guess in this sense they do.
He opens his eyes in the first one from sleeping, and then the ends he goes to sleep.
What do you? And just as a hint, what do you think? What do you think that is saying? Like, do you think it's...
That was my next question.
Yeah.
What is that?
Because it's debatable.
That's a theme question.
It is a theme question. I'm skipping ahead a little bit.
I'm rough on the theme.
Yeah.
I think it's messy.
Is it like Another Day in the Hood? Is it something like that? I mean, what he's saying.
Are we going to jump to the theme?
Same shit,
what are we
different
doing?
day.
Well, do you want to
we'll park that. We'll move the opening because I think
theme's a different discussion. But
we'll
it's
there.
Weird because I want to kind of figure out the opening closing too. So I'll just bring that back up. So
it does feel like a video game though. That opening and closing. That's like what a video game character would do.
So the catalyst the catalyst in this movie, and you can almost see. I mean, when Sam called her up in Scotland and said, "Let's make this movie," he probably said, "Well, here's what it's about. They go on a mission to deliver a letter." You instantly say, "Okay, well, they get the mission. That's the catalyst." So that would be an easy one to fill right in. You'd be like, "Okay, they get a mission."
And it's a really good cinematic. It's the trailer. I mean, most of the trailer is the
Colin
catalyst.
Firth.
Yeah,
giving it up.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So then the break into, based on that same phone call, would be they go on the mission. They step into no man's land. They go on the journey.
Yeah.
They go from the ordinary world
to the different, the new world.
The one
so to
that has
speak,
been
the
built
danger
up to be
And I
dangerous
think-
and scary, and you
Exactly.
never go here. And all
I
that
think
stuff.
there's an argument to be made. I agree with you about No Man's Land, but I think there's an argument to be made that the end of Act break into 2 is when they get to the abandoned German fort, which is sort of where the actual like upside down opposite world, because No Man's Land isn't really opposite,
Right.
and like Act 2 is typically the opposite world,
And they're
that used
surprised,
to.
like they're finally shocked by what they're seeing.
And that
right?
happens way
Yeah.
more prototypical. It's what did I didn't write down when it was. Shit. Shame on me. But it's a lot
How
later, but
dare
still it doesn't in between how dare me. Then in between that No Man's Land and them hitting the German base, there's no extra character work
Right. Right.
that builds
It's
the before world, things that need fixing.
I kind of felt the same thing you're feeling, like that feels like some other kind of thing, like another shift.
Yeah.
The reason I'd go with the first, but it's all debatable.
It's
whatever you
debatable.
feel.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like how I feel about Raiders of the Lost Ark too.
2. So Temple of Doom.
No, as well. that would be 1.
That way, you're right. It's a
Right.
prequel. It's a prequel. So Last Crusade.
Yeah. Is their goal, obstacle, and stakes doesn't really change.
That's
in
right.
that. So I usually base it on the lock-in.
Yeah,
But again, it's debatable. But similarly with Raiders, I'm the opposite. I kind of put it after he joins up with Marion and says, I'm your partner. But the goal, obstacle, stakes really don't change too much. I guess they do sort of, because now he has the thing he's looking for the arc.
got-
But anyway.
I kind of lean toward Jimmy on this one.
With the abandoned
Yeah,
German
I kind
base.
of. That's how when I felt it.
It's the first
I-
objective that they tell him. You got to get to this German base.
Yeah,
They give him like kind of this little
There's-
list.
And on the opposite side of that, there's really no fun and games that are happening there. It's just more walking.
Just
and
death
Funny
and
games.
destruction.
Funny games in this
Well-
movie's a hard, hard one.
Fun and Games is
Yeah.
the movie you're expecting to
Yeah,
see, which
yeah.
is guys on a mission in World War One,
Yeah,
going
yeah,
out, blah blah
yeah.
blah.
Running and killing. Right.
So anyway,
Avoiding getting killed.
Avoiding death. Right. Yeah.
So in my opinion, then it's like the catalyst and the break into almost come right from the initial
Right at the
idea, like
beginning.
right from that phone call. The other stuff gets we got to do a little bit more work for. So what's the midpoint? You have to figure some stuff out to figure the midpoint. I think maybe.
The plane crash.
Well, I think it's the death.
The death.
I think the death
Well,
scene.
that's what I meant.
Yeah,
That scene of
Yeah, for sure.
him dying,
Yeah.
Blake
So-
dying.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
stake raiser. Now he's by himself.
And Bob,
you know?
you brought up how the protagonist thing.
It's a protagonist switch. It's
Oh
a
yeah,
surprise.
yeah. The one thing where I thought this movie really got me is that I really truly thought Blake was the star of the movie, and then this turned into the Schofield movie.
Right.
That switch actually surprised me. Did you guys not feel that?
No,
Did you
there
a-
was an element of he's sort of this anonymous character, and then he takes on.
Well, he's the one he's the Rudy of the movie. He had the heart. He had to do it. It was for his brother.
Right,
You know,
right.
And the other guy's kind of like the reluctant
he steps
hero.
Into, Schofield
Yeah.
steps into the spotlight there. He has to.
He has
He's
to.
shoved into the spotlight.
But up until that moment, till that German stabs him, it was like
Blake is
he's on the ride.
Blake
and-
is driving the story
Yes.
forward.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So I really felt that when I watched it.
honestly,
Yeah.
from the table discussion they initially had, I could see that coming up. Like, how do we surprise people? What if we got rid of the one guy and then it's the other guy by himself? Or it could have been even before that. Like, we can't have both of these guys.
They probably
survive.
mentioned
Right.
When do we
executive
kill them?
decision. They were like, "Remember when Steven Seagal died?" Executive decision?
Yeah.
Samuel Jackson, Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah, right.
And then to me, I always think that Psycho is another one. You know,
Oh,
that
Yeah.
has a
So
switch.
false.
Um,
Yep.
False
leads.
protagonist, I guess.
Yeah.
and a
Give it a
lot,
term.
There is an element of false protagonist.
Yeah.
a lot of times you come to these decisions too. Like, should this be the all is lost moment or should it be the midpoint?
Right.
And in this one, it's the midpoint.
And I'm sure the discussion was, how late are we going to kill Blake?
That's right.
They
That's
always
right.
knew he was going to die, but when?
And the midpoint is
To
a
give
much bigger
Schofield
surprise.
substance, it has to be early.
Yeah.
Well,
Agreed.
right?
Midpoint, it's
Yeah.
the goals, like you said, goals reset. That's the perfect way.
and the
to
all is
stakes raised.
lost. The all is lost is more predictable. Like, the midpoint's a real big surprise that he dies that soon. If he had died at the 75-minute mark of the 100-minute movie, we'd have been like, yeah, we've seen that. You know,
there would be no struggle for Schofield to actually
Yeah.
go through. He has to go through a lot of different things to get
Mhm.
there.
yeah.
He has to get the ring back to Mount Doom.
What would you say is
Right?
the all is lost?
I think when you get shot, is the all is lost. I think when you get shot, and then the Dark Night of the Soul would be the whole, the woman, the baby, and all that kind of stuff.
And,
that
and
whole
the
section.
reason I wanted
the
to
town,
ask you is
right?
because typically, correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, because
Mhm.
I might be. The the All Is Lost and Dark Night of the Soul sometimes have the opposite emotion of the midpoint. So the baby is sort of a whiff of life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I felt
Is
like
that a term, whiff of life?
No, it's just a whiff
okay.
of usually Dark Night of the Soul comes with
Save
a
the
whiff,
Cat 3 by
comes
Jamie
with
Nash.
comes with a whiff of death. People who hate Save the Cat have logged off.
They would log off the whole show. We talk about it constantly.
No, but I thought that scene was like a glimmer of hope for him and life.
Yeah.
And so I found it interesting that it came in that section of the story, and it really was like an emotional.
It also
opposite
was
of
a
the
reminder
midpoint.
of him why he's even
Absolutely
trying.
his family. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we were talking about the major beats, and now we're going into All Is Lost and Dark Knight, but
We
it's a good talk. I always find that those sections are sort of this weird, almost like what the debate does after the catalyst. It's a reaction and how we react. So it's like a rethinking of it. Should I be doing this? Why should I be doing this? And sometimes it's more wallowing in pity, but other times it's more building them back up to get to the part where they can do it.
And that's exactly what that does.
Yeah.
He's reinvigorated by the woman and the baby.
I often find that Dark Knight and the debate are similar in that regard. Like one is to go on the first mission and the other's to go on the finale.
That's
so
I love that.
I think there's sort of this weird
Also,
introspection.
what I like about that scene too is I don't know if a lot of people would even call this a big deal, but I feel like that's the moment also when he kind of just strips himself down to just himself. He gives the woman everything. And he's like, it's me. It's like there was this like non-verbal, it's visual. It's just him and the goal now. There's no help.
And we learn later that he has a wife and daughters.
Yeah.
So that becomes you understand that that's like a huge reminder.
Yeah.
Of like he's got something to fight for.
Right.
And like so it like I said like re-energizes him.
I think this movie would be way better on more watches. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Now you have all the answers at the end.
I know,
but
I think when you watch it more than once.
I'm on both of your sides with the. I would have enjoyed it more had we been given more emotional connection to him sooner. If I knew all about his family.
Hence why the second watch should be better.
Yeah. But they were trying to do that in the service of the gimmick, but whatever.
Yeah.
Keep going, Jamie.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Sometimes the way they get around that too is they cast somebody you know really well. Like
it was surprising that they were unknowns.
Yeah. Shia LaBeouf would have been
right.
As a guy, or I don't know, somebody that you just already have a connection with.
Right. You feel connected to him
I
because
love
you
Tom
know
Hanks.
him in
I
other
hope
movies.
He wins,
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
This guy was really pointy.
Pointy.
He just didn't look like a star. I don't know who that actor is. He was good, but he didn't look like a star to me. And like what you're saying, I almost had a distance from him. Like, who is this guy?
Man, that
just
everyman
face.
aspect.
He has a very everyman face, which it seems like it's fully intentional.
Yeah, deliberate.
Yeah.
I would have cast Kevin Hart, but I don't know.
Can you imagine how interesting that would have been?
It would have been if he had like a British accent and everything too.
Yeah, this would be really weird.
When the deepfake technology comes on, I'm sure somebody will do it. So then the break-in is sort of debatable, but it's sort of whatever connective tissue when he kind of sets out on that mission. I'm not sure if it's when he's going through the bodies and then he crawls up on the thing, if that's the break-into, because it's kind of the third act. Is when the other soldier, he's kind of reached that world and now has to convince them somewhere in that.
To me, it reminded me, and it's weird because it was Thomas Newman's score, and Thomas Newman did the score to Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
and to me, it was like Andy Dufresne crawled through a river of shit and came out clean, and like this guy Schofield crawls through a river of bodies. And like comes out. It's like almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
And the Thomas Newman score is, blasting,
booming,
and you can see then when you have all those beats, it kind of hints at what the whole story is, because you know your finale at that point. You're kind of projecting it. You know how it ends because somebody's sitting by a tree most likely, or whatever, they're alive. The midpoint, somebody's died. So you kind of have the skeleton that then you can go back in and further refine
the little pieces.
So that's why those 6 are the ones.
Yeah, I'm sorry I talked about some of the smaller beats in between. I just
no
thought
worries.
It was worth discussing.
No, but those are the 6. I just thought then we could skip over a couple.
Yeah, and we can go back to the opening and closing when we get to theme.
Yeah.
We're
Let's do it.
That's fine. Yeah, don't be sorry.
I'm sorry.
This is a weird movie to talk about this.
Yeah, it's dark.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
So
I mean, why don't we talk about it now? The Schofield arc.
I don't know.
I say yes. I think he's a different man at the end than
and
he is
that's
at the
your
beginning.
test,
That's always my
Jamie.
test. If we put that character in the opening, would he act differently when he got like the message and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
What do you think it is, Bob?
Well, I mean, there's like
I'm asking.
there's pragmatic reasons and there's also emotional reasons, right? Like obviously he would act different because he's been through. I think this is the first time we're seeing this soldier go through true hell. Like he's been in war, but he hasn't seen this kind of hell,
this much
so
personal hell.
Right. So there is like he's been through the PTSD of this movie.
I mean that town burning is like a descent into hell, man.
Right. Like so you cannot, even though it might not be like an emotional thing, you can't be the same person after you go through this. It's like the Revenant or something. You know what I mean? Like once you go through something like that, you are changed. There's no argument.
Right.
You know what I mean? But he also, there's an emotional aspect with, I think he was close to Blake. And while it's not very heavy, everything we just said, it's not very set up. Everything we watched from that moment on is him saying, for my last dying breath, I will do this because of my honor for this guy, which is something that he did not seem to have before Blake died. He seemed kind of like a cold dude.
Right.
And then he becomes warm with loss.
Right.
So he's different.
He's
different.
changed. I think he's different too. I went in. I always look for the confessional scene, and there really isn't one.
Yeah, the
closest thing we get is where he says they're talking about the medal, and Blake says you should have taken it home to your family. You should have given it to them. And he says, I hated going home. I hated it. When I knew I couldn't ever stay, and when I knew I had to leave them, and they might never see me again. So I think it's a cynical to hope arc is what I would say. There's a learns to that you can make a difference arc that I've seen a lot. And if this feels like he's a guy who, when we met him, he doesn't feel like he can make a difference. Like this is a hopeless mission. Like they're gonna die, and he doesn't feel like he can make a difference.
Almost cynical just about war. War is hopeless, so it doesn't matter. Right.
And he even says like the medal doesn't make you special. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything.
And in the end, he learns that it does mean something.
And he also learns that he means something to his family the way that Blake meant something to his brother.
And to him.
And to him, right.
Yeah.
His brother. I think that's the lesson he learns, is that he can make a difference, like, in the battle and at home.
It's really simple.
It's simple, and it's
so
light.
simple.
There's not much evidence of it.
It's simple, but it is there.
Also because it's sort of real time. I mean, I know he's knocked out for some minutes, but to him it's real time.
That's the only cut in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't learn that many lessons and go through encounters in real time.
Right.
Like in a movie that spans a year or 10 years or 2 months or 1 week, you can learn more lessons.
They did what they could with the character's real-time experience.
Like, this might be the lesson, but maybe we can't totally see the effects of it until the next movie, 1918.
It's very much like, it's like John McClane. Like, we hope that he's 1918. It's like John McClane. We hope. I opened the door for Jamie to do the inside joke.
Oh my God! Yeah.
No, but we hope that.
If he hadn't done this, they would have won the war sooner.
If he just stayed out of it, it would have been fine.
The war would have been.
They would have attacked, won the war.
Listen to our Die Hard episode
saved millions.
My idiocy in bringing up a fan theory.
No, but I think that we feel like the arc, the actions that prove the arc, will happen after the movie ends. Like, he's gonna go home to his family, come back to me. He is gonna come back to them, and he's not gonna be the closed off, cold dude that he was.
I don't want to see that.
No, I don't.
It could be.
But
in my
I
head,
think that there is an arc. Yeah.
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 I don't see how. Would you argue there wasn't? Is that what you're?
I was arguing originally that there wasn't, and then I took a deeper look.
Yeah, I mean,
no, I just think there's.
It's light. I'm not disagreeing.
It's light.
No, I certainly wouldn't. I think,
but it's the movie. It's as simple and messy as the movie itself.
Yeah, it's
like he is changed by the very thing we're seeing. It can't not be changed, so it doesn't matter.
I guess my point is, and I'm kind of agnostic on this debate. There are people that would say you don't need that arc bullshit. Do whatever you want.
Marty McFly, right?
Yeah, and then there's other people. But most movies you find there is some hint of it, and I think this movie included, where they might point to this. 1917 needed an arc, he just went through a mission. But you feel he's different. If you put him in this movie and you put him in the beginning, he would be different.
Right.
No, he might be
is
more
it?
cynical. I don't know. He might even be more scared.
More
Like,
cynical
that's still
by the end.
changing.
It's
Interesting.
changing.
That's a
There's something.
change.
So
There's
maybe
something that
I'm
he
wrong. Maybe
changes.
he's not hopeful at all, and maybe
No,
he's
maybe.
the opposite.
I don't
maybe
know.
he's super damaged.
Still an arc.
That's part of it. Like I could see him being like, I'm not going through that again. Hell with that. We're gonna die out there.
Becomes a
You know,
deserter or something. After
you go out. You know?
Still, that's arguably an arc, right?
It is.
It
It
just
is.
gets worse.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But
And I think that's all an arc has to be. So I think that's the argument I'd use against those. You don't need one of those stupid arcs. I think, well, maybe I think you do, because if the story is so slight that it doesn't change them at all,
right.
then the
If
story
there-
might not be that good.
If
I
there's
mean,
not
even
enough
Marty McFly probably
forcing
changes at the end of all
growth and
that.
change,
Yeah, right.
I got you. If there's
Yeah.
not
I was
enough
gonna say-
transformational moments,
Yeah, then why
is
are
the
we
story
telling?
pushing them?
I feel like I'm feel like I'm McGee in adaptation. Why the fuck are you telling the story?
But yeah, I was gonna say like
Get the hell out of here.
Someone goes blind.
I don't want to be a jerk about all the terms and everything, but in a war movie especially, everything this guy goes through is a life-changing event.
No, I think
From
you're right.
You know,
scene to scene.
And like, so what if it's
Yeah.
not on the page and he goes, "Wow, now I see the importance of humanity." You know,
Yeah,
I don't
no.
need that.
But-
Dude, the guy had to kill all these people, and like, and his life was like almost over for a sustained 90 minutes. Like,
yeah, but
that's
like,
changed.
that's
No matter
changed.
what, I don't need to see or
That's
hear
my
it.
argument.
They-
for
Yeah,
it,
it's
but they
changed.
do plop in like there's when we meet him, he doesn't get any mail, and the script says he doesn't seem to care.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it describes him as
He's
not
cold.
caring.
Yeah.
And then like Blake is really upset because he thought he was going home and he can't go home now. It's delayed, and Schofield's like, it's better not to go home. And then like there's all these little moments that it plants about not feeling like he has an emotional connection to his family, and then by the end, I mean, he's looking at the picture and it says, "Come back to me." How much more literal can you get?
I think you could almost even argue that if he had an arc, and you could argue that his arc actually ends as he's holding his friend and he's dying.
Interesting.
Like he's the same guy from that
from
moment
that
to the
moment.
end, because at that moment he makes a decision of who he is as a person.
That's
know?
that's a good point.
Yeah.
There is, that's a moral premise. The book, The Moral Premise, has
Great
this
book.
has this
I've
thing
read
called.
that book. I've read that one. I know that one.
It has this thing called the moment of grace. And the moment of grace is when they have this kind of moment that from that point forth they're trying things a different way. And I think that's a very good moment of grace.
In the middle, when he's
right
holding
in the middle. And it's usually around the midpoint. It's
Yeah.
usually not necessarily the midpoint, but it's usually a few pages before, a few pages after, or the midpoint.
and he literally like takes what Blake has that's medals. He takes his rings, he takes the thing around his neck. It's as close as Blake has to a medal, and he's got to deliver the medals to his brother.
Also,
it's
a teaching
like,
moment. I didn't know the British soldiers didn't have dog tags.
Yeah, me neither.
I didn't know that. I was like, why didn't he take his dog tag?
He
oh,
had
right.
identification, but it wasn't the same
they
as
did-
what we're accustomed to.
We're accustomed to the dog tags.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the point of dog tags. is
Yeah.
you do that. But he
Yeah.
didn't have that. I didn't know that.
So
yeah.
the
It's
moment of grace.
He's almost like a.
Moment
That's a
of
good
grace.
one, Jamie.
Mhm.
It's
He's
a good
almost-
thing to bring up in
This
this
is a weird movie to bring up for this, but it almost gives you like if we saw Inigo Montoya from the inception of his from Princess Bride, like you know what I mean? Like he has a goal for his life now, and when we see the end, this guy get to the end, he probably had a moment of, well, now what?
Mhm.
I did the thing. My life's goal was that mission.
Get
and
back
now,
to my family.
What do I do now? I don't know. I've been I've
Yeah.
been through hell, and
Yeah.
I'm lost almost. You just get to my
Then
my
they bring a
family.
scroll. He died the next day.
Yeah, right.
Accidentally shot by his
I
injured.
was waiting for that tree to blow up or
Oh
something.
my god.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's like, is he gonna get shot right here? Like, I mean, terrible. Oh man, it's a different movie.
The next day, he helped Wonder Woman escape. No.
What a cameo that would have been.
She
Right.
just showed up at the end.
Tonal shift.
Right, total shift. Fine, that's okay.
Well,
So,
well
yeah.
related to that, why don't we, theme-wise, I mean,
Antagonist, right?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to bring up the fact that there is no. They don't even. I think it's very interesting that
The stab
they,
guy doesn't
that
count.
they don't. I mean, even his face is on screen for like 30 seconds. It's very frantic.
and it's in like a wide, so you can't even see it. Yeah.
I think it's very. It says a lot about the movie that they never really give a human face to the Germans.
Yeah.
I think it's almost feels like the villains are the superiors on their side who are like warmongering.
Yeah.
Like, is Benedict Cumberbatch the villain of this movie?
I was gonna just say what you just. I was gonna say that he feels like he shot and acted like a villain.
Like his plan is equally as impactful to all the suffering as the Germans' trap. There's
even a praise of the killer speech about him.
There is.
Yeah.
You're right. There's a praise of the killer speech.
Yeah.
He's a hard ass that will not budge.
And he thinks he knows what's happening, and he
Take
doesn't.
a witness. Some people like to fight.
You're so right.
That is absolutely. There's two praise of the killer speeches for him. Then
The Mark Strong one.
Colin Firth says he thinks he knows what he's doing, and
they're both
doesn't,
delivered by
and
name
he's
actors.
There's
like
the
big actors in the movie.
There's two praise of the killer speeches for him. So
Right.
that's a good point. I was just thinking that the villain's plan is almost Colonel Mackenzie rather than the Germans.
Yeah,
That's
the
plan
Germans
we're
are almost
trying-
a force of nature.
Yeah, like the plan the villain's plan
It's
that
like
we're trying.
Twister. It's the tornadoes.
Like we're rooting for him to prevent his own guy
Yeah.
from
Nazi NATO.
Yeah.
Nazi.
I,
How has that not been made by Asylum or something?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just thought it was very interesting. It's not what I expected from a war movie for the Germans, and I know we haven't hit the Nazi era yet, but for the Germans to not be given like a leader with a face is very unconventional and not what I was expecting from this movie at all. And like it almost like said like the guys on their side who want the fight, like some men just want to fight, are the bad guys.
You're expecting like a Save It Private Ryan where they let the German go and then he comes back. Like
Right.
that kind of a arc somewhere.
And I
in
think
there.
that's telling about what this movie's trying to say about
Yeah.
war. Yeah, and I don't know what that
Faceless.
is, but yeah.
Although that praise of the killer speech that Mark Strong gives was pitch perfect fucking
Mhm.
writing.
Mm-hmm.
When he said take a witness, I was like, that's everything I need to know about this guy.
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
he's like, this guy will.
This guy is.
He's bloodthirsty.
Yeah,
He wants the war. That's fucking great. That was an excellent
it
moment.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we can go into the.
Now we
theme.
can,
What
yeah.
is it, Jamie?
I don't know because you gotta.
I don't know.
I don't
All right.
know.
See you guys later.
Thanks for listening.
Usually I tie it to the arc, and usually you know there are some. Here's where I was trying to clue into it just to see if there was a bigger picture story. And again, this is kind of where the opening image, closing image, I was trying to figure out.
Mhm.
Like that's a key part of the theme usually. Another place, they had this song they kept coming up, that
Yes,
kept
I
singing. You
didn't
know,
write down the lyrics.
it was something about you travel faster as one, I think, or something. I mean, that was the gist of it.
Oh, it's about unity.
When you go, yeah, like when you go through hell, you travel faster as one, or something like that. I wish I should look it up.
Shame on us
And-
for not.
And
It was Mark Strong said that, didn't he?
it comes
was
up a
during the
couple
truck
times.
scene,
There-
Wasn't it?
I think
Oh
he-
no! At the very
it
beginning,
was
that's
the
the
vi-
justification for why we're only sending 2 of you. But is that in the song as
Oh,
well?
no, you're right.
So it's
you're right,
echoed
you're
in
right.
the song.
It is. It is. And
Interesting. I didn't catch that.
But I don't know what this movie
That
tells
seems
me.
like a bleak theme,
It's-
though. Travel alone and you'll win. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well,
That's-
maybe he's proving somehow the opposite. You know,
like
like
he was never alone during
like,
his
I-
strife.
yeah, like,
I guess.
I'm traveling with the baggage of the guy. I'm
It's
saving people. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I
don't
read
know.
this
Sure, it's
article.
not just like don't give up.
I
very
think
well
you
could.
believe
I
in
think
or something.
I-
I don't know.
so like digging into. I was looking because I wasn't sure. It's not easy.
Yeah. Usually
Um,
those songs are clues. They're kind of like
yeah.
when you
I
put
missed
something on
that.
the board. You know, it's
I was
Unless it's
wrestling
like
with
Lord of the
with
Rings or
with the
something.
metal speeches
Yeah.
seemed important, but I think so. So the subject of hope comes up in all the big moments. So in Colin Firth's scene, he says hope twice when they're like the Germans have abandoned that base. Like
Yeah, yeah.
we don't have to worry about it anymore. He's like, don't get your hopes up. But then in the end of that speech, he tells them that they are their only hope.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a debate about hope. And then at the truck scene, which is like right after the MiG point, as he's leaving by himself, the one soldier says to him, I hope that you get there. And then in the Colonel Mackenzie scene, he says, I hope today would be a good day. Hope is a dangerous thing. And I don't know what it's saying about hope. And I feel like that moment could be at the end where he closes his eyes and after looking at his family that he hopes he's going to, I don't know.
So there was something you guys said, but I didn't quite that landed with me. But the other place that I kept coming back to was the metal thing.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know, nobody cares about these medals. They're stupid. But in the end, he showed what earning a medal really was, or something.
Honor.
There's some kind
Was
of
there
thing.
a line where he will probably get a medal? Didn't somebody say something about
Oh,
that?
he said that to Blake for
Oh,
saving
yeah,
his life.
saving his life,
You got
yeah.
your medal sorted, and he's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"You think?"
Right.
Like he's really excited about it, and then he
Yeah,
gets killed. But that's what leads him to be like, "What about your medal? What happened to it?" And he's like, "I sold it because I don't give a shit because it doesn't matter." And then by the end, he does learn that it matters, but there's not really any discussion
It
to
seems like
hammer it home.
It turned a guy that didn't care into a guy that did. That's what it does.
No, but so I was reading. I read this article by like one of my favorite screenwriting teachers, Paul Joseph Galino. He wrote Screenwriting and Sequence Method, which we've talked about. And he's a teacher. He was a teacher at USC, and I think he teaches at Chapman now. Anyway, he wrote an article bashing this.
You
movie.
wrote Cop and a Half.
Cop and a Half. That would be awesome.
There's a sequel.
No, but he was arguing that this is not a good movie because it's thematically empty and that it has nothing to say. And there's an article of scriptmag.com on, check it out. And
that seems
that's
wrong.
why I wanted to bring it up because
to me it has some meaning, but it's
I
hard.
think
That seems like it honestly
something.
seems like no offense to that guy, but
Yeah.
it seems like a dick thing to say about a war movie.
Well, it's like,
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it obviously has something to say, but
it made me go like, well, what does it have to
So,
say?
yeah, no, I'm agreeing.
just me sitting back thinking about it, and this is me just on the fly, but I think here's what's interesting about the story. Nobody's even going to know this guy's a hero at the end of the day.
Yep.
Think about that.
No one saw
No
it.
one will ever know the journey he went
we
through.
know Benedict
to find himself.
Cumberbatch's character is going to not
He'll
care.
probably
Yeah,
take
no.
the credit somehow
Yeah.
or be pissed or whatever.
Yeah, right.
So literally,
My men got some intel.
this guy was just some lame messenger.
It's Rogue One.
People do remember the
That's what it is.
people
interesting.
remember
Much as I hate that movie.
people remember the stupid medals, but those things maybe are good, maybe they're not, maybe they're. But this guy is going to do something he never earned a medal for, and it's a lot more important than the thing he did earn the medal for.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just something like the individual accomplishments will never be told, but we should appreciate them or something. I don't know. They say a lot.
There's something
some kind
about
of
him
thing.
getting to write to his mother that he says, "I'll get to write to your mother and tell him about you weren't alone." And he's going to write to Blake's mother, and he's going to reunite with his families. I don't know.
Like
So-
there are stories that are never going to get medals that were
Correct me
heroes. I
If
don't know.
I'm wrong, we've talked before about how I think Jamie, you said it. Like sometimes great movies are written even without themes,
yeah,
like
clear
absolutely.
themes.
like clear themes.
There's subject matter here going on.
I remember Jamie saying, like, sometimes you're just finding the theme as you're writing.
As you're writing it.
And you might not even find it
of course,
ever.
Yeah.
It's just
That's the best way to do it.
But-
What keeps popping up?
It's weird to me to say something's bad when it is a story that has touched
Yeah.
people and that does have a purpose.
You're not saying it's bad, but you're saying it's weird to hear someone say that.
Right,
Yes.
like yeah, the theme isn't exactly clear, but we are watching a character go through something that's truly incredible
I think
and
it's-
impressive and
So-
insane and horrible.
There are writers
You know?
that write with clear intent to tell a theme.
Yeah, right,
And there are
right.
other ones that just comes from their self-conscious and it feeds into it.
Right.
I think you can feel when a movie doesn't have a theme, when it's just like,
This one doesn't feel empty.
this one does not feel
So let me
That's-
ask you this,
thank
Jamie.
you.
Here's
Yeah, it
a
doesn't
good
feel empty to
exercise.
me.
We're figuring this out on the fly. It's
Yeah,
fun.
we are.
The moment of grace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is that moment of grace, and what does that say?
Well, in this movie,
That's what I'm saying.
I do think it's when he dies.
And what
That
is
Blake
that?
dies.
What is he?
And
What moment of grace
so-
is he having there?
So what is he learning? What is he learning to do differently? I think he is. This is tricky because we don't get a lot of depth of his character.
right.
But I think he kind of goes from the guy that reluctantly was on the mission to a guy that's gonna
He's accepting the mission full
accept
force.
the mission
Yeah.
in
It's
his
all
soul,
on him.
in his soul,
In his
more than just the
soul,
orders.
right. And that's because he feels a responsibility. So what does this say? He has a responsibility to honor Blake by
To make his death matter.
it's way less about the 1,600 men and way more just about getting his identification and his rings and his picture and all his stuff to his brother. So what is that? That's the question.
Mhm.
That's basically what he's like. His moment of grace is all about that.
Also, at the expense of his own life at all costs.
Yeah.
Right. He's
Right.
willing to
Like,
sacrifice himself.
He would
Blake.
There's no point I doubt after that moment that he would die happily to deliver the message, and he would just give himself up.
So
That's different than when we meet him, right?
Absolutely.
I feel that's a change, and that's a theme of some sort, right?
Yeah.
I was
Come on.
I was going to
Yeah.
bring this up, but I forgot about it. But in that book,
You're right.
Can My Screenplay Beat Up Your Screenplay? He posits
It's a great title.
Yeah. The author, Jeffrey Schechter, I think is his
It's a great
name.
book.
Yeah. He posits this idea. And I like to keep this in the back of my mind when I'm writing arcs, just to help me kind of look at it. And he says, Act 1, they're an orphan. Act 2, they're a wanderer. Act 3, they're a warrior. And Act 4, in the finale, they're a martyr.
This might skip Wanderer, but
Yeah, what's that?
I might skip Wanderer a little
Well,
bit.
well,
but
wanderer just means they're like they go on a mission and they don't really. They're kind
You're
of the
not
same.
invested in
they're
it.
not
It's
invested. Oh,
real-
okay, then yeah.
Yeah, they're not invested. And then when the midpoint happens, so when Blake dies, he becomes a warrior, and then in the third act, he becomes a martyr. And it kind of tracks with this guy.
Yeah, it does track with
No,
that. That's,
I don't know what that internally. I can't wrap my theme around it, like because I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know exactly why or what it's saying when he turns from the one to the other to the other. But I feel it, and I think it
I
makes
feel it
sense.
too.
It
Yeah,
logically makes sense.
I think that's why I guess what I was trying to say earlier is like you can't tell me that audiences haven't felt a theme.
Yeah.
Now, with the fact that we can't put it into very convenient words.
Yeah. The only words that I've
you know.
found, but I don't know if this is a theme, this is more the arc I kept going back to, is, like I said, he seems like a guy who doesn't, he's the guy who's saying metal's not special. Nobody cares. And that, what's that saying? Like, you don't matter. What we do doesn't matter. And then by the end, and that's at the midpoint, it's like, oh shit, every
about that as
single
the theme?
moment. Yeah.
What we do matters.
Yeah,
Is that a theme?
Yeah, learning you
Yeah.
can make that cynicism
Versus
erasing cynicism.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
I was
Learning
once-
you can make a difference.
In my
Yes.
in my early career, I was once told by a very like big time script consultant, like one of the bigger ones, that's I Matter is generally behind most themes. I Matter.
There you
I
go.
take up space.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that? Well, that fits.
That seems fine to me.
That's-
I don't-
That script consultant was scriptbutcher.com.
Yeah,
No,
right.
go there now for your discounted.
That's me, by the
consulting.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not. Jamie doesn't need my notes ever. Yeah.
I'd say the
People
name, but
need
I'm
your
not sure if
notes.
it's right.
Yeah. So we all agree there's a theme. It might just be a little.
It's not
it might
clear.
be personal,
It's what you take out of it is a very
which kind of
interesting
goes with
idea.
Schofield and his blankness
Yeah,
a little
being
bit.
blank character. Yeah,
Take it away, but
being a
I think
coda.
saying there's nothing there is wrong.
I agree with you, Bob.
There's
And
something
I disagreed
there.
with that article, and I was
Yeah.
surprised because it's from somebody whose opinion. I didn't mean to bash him, but it's what sparked me wanting to have.
We're
this
all
debate.
wrong sometimes.
Yeah,
We're talking about
Hell.
art. It doesn't. There is no
Yeah.
right.
It's what it's. I
matter,
wanted to
yeah.
mention it because I want people
Yeah.
to read it, and it's what sparked me to have this discussion here.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I guess because I teared up at the end of the movie, and I was like, well, I don't think it was hollow.
I mean, you watched him go through
right.
so
I'm just saying
much.
that has to mean something, and everything doesn't need to have the cheeseburger,
Tidy.
the cheeseburger theme that we always. You know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
doesn't always have to be wrapped up in a bow.
I agree.
You know.
Sometimes the
What- does that
interpretation
guy hate
is more
all-
interesting.
What about
No,
What about?
he's a fantastic writer. Let me be clear.
Yeah. No,
His book
I'm not.
is fucking fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But like this movie is what is the like a David Lynch movie? There's a name for him.
Oh, Antiplot.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
say like
Antipod, yeah.
yeah, like,
this
is he
is
not
arc
like-
plot to the max.
does that writer,
It is.
the fantastic writer that we're clarifying, does he not like does he like only arc plot movies?
I don't know. The book is his book is all about arc plot.
Because
stuff.
anti-plot movies, the theme can be
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like the
yeah,
theme
yeah.
can be completely
He
lost.
knows his shit.
Mini plot almost the themes. So a lot of writers stay away from theme and mini plot because they want it to feel like real life, and they don't want
Yeah.
the hand of the writer to show up at any time.
Yeah.
So they're very cautious about being too
Right.
overt about the theme.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Man.
I still feel like the fact that all of us are at least passionate about saying there's something there.
Yeah,
means that
totally.
there is.
Oh, I felt emotion.
But
That's
you know
all
what?
that matters, really.
But you know what? I have seen posts by people who are like, it left me cold. So there is that.
Interesting.
Not discounting that. It's up to the viewer, right?
Yeah.
It's up to the viewer.
Yeah, whatever your experience was, that's your experience.
Yeah.
A lot of my favorite movies, like in the 80s, like I don't even know if this is true, but some of the Spielberg ones and stuff, they didn't have overt theme, like, baked into them. They just had the
like
subconscious.
Raiders doesn't feel like a theme movie.
They have like a subconscious.
Indy doesn't even
stuff.
arc that much.
Yeah.
It's like
The writers are putting
We're
personal.
gonna do that someday.
The writers are putting.
I mean, if he didn't do
personal truths into
anything, they
things.
wouldn't even.
That's in it.
I'm sorry, Jamie.
It's time to end this.
We need to do it just so we can talk about that. I really
Exactly.
want to talk about that. Yeah, I think so. What did we all learn from 1917?
For me, I learned that it confirmed that gimmicks need to have intention and they need to inform all the decisions in the story. And this one does.
Yeah, what most impressed me, this isn't necessarily a lesson learned, but most impressed me was how they can keep the pace in a movie like this and how hard that would be to write. Because I know when I write things, I'm constantly overwriting, and I need it to be edited. I need an editor to come in and chop it up and tighten it up. In this movie, they didn't have that extra, pass. So it's kind of amazing that they were able to pull it off. That was what really impressed me about it, is that they could pull it off without that extra
I agree.
chop,
Yeah, and I'm going to go with just how well I guess I'm going to say false protagonist thing can work if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Because that struck me as hard as it could. Because I was like, oh, he's not in this movie. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was I was moved by the fact that he was the motivation. Like was not expecting that.
Yeah.
And that was really impressive.
That Blake was the motivation? Yeah.
That was more impressive to me than like the actual gimmick. And in a weird way, I was like, man, that's what hit me about this movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, 1917.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Well, by the time you're hearing this, it'll either have won Best Picture and definitely Best Cinematography. So
Maybe
right?
it'll win Best Screenplay.
Or Best Director.
Or best editing.
We can't know, but
Yeah.
Best Editing, yeah. Best Sound Mixing. Sure, fine. I bet you know what? I bet you it'll win Best Score. That's my guess. Yeah.
I have the score.
It is. All right, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
You have just listened to Writer's Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.